What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. We've talked a lot about champions that were officially scrapped or concepts that the community might have created themselves in the past, but Riot themselves have also actually hinted a lot at future champions based on niches that have either haven't been explored or are kind of just missing something so far where there's a lot of potential for a champion in the future. Most of these concepts are coming from Riot Ezreal, and all of them have at least some official Rioter comment that gives them some level of potential to be created in the future. At least more so than just maybe something the community has suggested. And as always, if you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you don't enjoy the video, hit that dislike, because if this video gets, let's say, 8,000 ratings, I'm gonna buy some Chinese food. And let's get started. First on the list is a new Ascended champion. Riot Thermal Kitten mentioned that due to the return of Azir and the rise of the Sun Disk, it opens up a spot in the lore for the new Ascended champions. It's pretty much open to interpretation about what kind of Ascended champion we could see next, but we can speculate from looking at the current lineup. The Ascended champions that exist right now are godlike creatures with human features, all coming from Shurima, with the exception of Xerath, who just became a being of pure energy. Most of their abilities are at least partially magical, with the exception of Renekton, who's a bit more physical focused. We can probably guess from this that the next Ascended champion will also have some kind of magical ability as well. If Riot want to spread the Ascended champion type to other roles, then it's quite likely to maybe be a bot laner or a jungler, as so far the Ascended champions don't really see much of any play in those roles. Although they aren't Ascended, Sivir, Skarner, and Rammus are all from Shurima though, and they do fill the jungler and AD carry roles, so it's actually quite likely that we might see an Ascended Shuriman as a support champion. This also fits in pretty well with the magical focus, as most supports are inherently magic based and just vary by being ranged or melee. Ascended champions also all have pretty strong crowd control abilities too, and this is something that is well suited to the support role. For our next concept, it's a champion that Riot Ezreal himself said that he wanted to make, which is a champion that could create permanent stealth wards that were visible by particle effects but actually needed stealth detection to kill. The interesting part is that the champion would be able to fire his spells using the ward as a basis point, so he could, for example, fire a ranged nuke from either himself or from any of the wards that he placed down on the map. And this would be true for all other cast types, like player-based area of effect spells would be castable around the wards rather than around himself. Separately, Ezreal mentioned that he wanted to do mage monsters in the future, or maybe even a stealth-based monster, so it's possible that these two ideas could kinda merge together and end up giving us a stealth-based monster champion that uses wards as a way to attack enemies. This is a pretty sweet and unexplored design space for the most part too. The only other champion that can kind of make a ward is Teemo, but Teemo can't really interact with his mushrooms in any way outside of enemies just walking over them. A champion based around using wards would probably work best in either the mid lane or maybe as a support, so it'll be interesting to see where this champion could end up in terms of a main role if Riot actually decides to go ahead with this idea and create that stealthy monster mage. Next up, we have a character that was described as some kind of polarity-based sort of champion. We can only really guess what Riot Ezreal meant by that, but he mentioned it while answering a question about lightning-based champions, so it's pretty likely that he's talking about magnetic poles, positives and negatives and stuff. And the polarity could be about directing electrical fields to lock down or burst out enemies. Ezreal also mentioned that this could be a Hex Mage sort of character, so potentially someone that debuffs enemies rather than killing them or CCing them outright. Honestly, debuffs are actually kind of rare in League so far. The most common are things like armor shredding or maybe grievous wounds. There's quite a lot of unexplored territory here, so it's pretty cool to try to think of some electrical based abilities that could maybe debuff enemies through their electrical shocks, perhaps doing interesting things like temporarily reducing someone's total ability power rather than just flat out cutting damage dealt like Exhaust does. In quite a lot of other games, electric magic kind of saps power away from a target, so a Hex Mage that could drain your mana or power in some sort of way could be really awesome and useful for some super clutch plays to deny a key ultimate in a fight while still fitting the archetype. The big problem with something like this is of course that it would be pretty annoying to play against, and Riot definitely try and avoid gameplay that feels really bad for the victim in most cases, at least recently. Still, there's definitely more ways to make the Hex Mage type of character work, and we definitely have room for more lightning based or just general electric type champions to be added into the game. One of the more requested champion concept is actually for a Doppelganger champion, a champion that clones an ally or an enemy and basically uses their same abilities and stats. And this would be a seriously game-altering addition, but again, it might be a little bit frustrating to play against. Riot mentioned though that they actually did have plans for a champion like this at one point, but at the time decided against it because it would damage the new user experience by just being way too confusing to play against. It opened up some new strategies and would need a ton of balance testing the limits for what the Doppelganger champion could do. For example, a good idea for making it work is to maybe let the Doppelganger clone a champion with its ultimate and then use their basic abilities, but maybe not their ultimate. This could lead to a really cool team composition where it's set up so that the Doppelganger copies a champion on the allied team that has some really powerful basic abilities, or maybe even it's used as a counterpick to deal with something similar on the enemy team. There's quite a few champions in the game that are strong without their ultimates, like Blitzcrank for example, and being able to have 2 rocket grabs ready to fire off in a game could just be so cool, although pretty unhealthy for the game. That's only one way to make the Doppelganger champion kind of work though, but there's probably a ton of other ways to do it as well. One problem could be whether it would have a kit that works at times where you don't want to copy a champion, or would it be pretty much forced to clone someone at all times? It's a little bit confusing, but it is a very complex and interesting sort of concept. And for our next champion, we're looking at someone who's a little bit less complex to figure out mechanically, but just as difficult to create in a gameplay sense, which is a champion with a permanent pet. I actually talked about this concept a little bit in a previous video, but it's worth mentioning again on this list because Riot Ezreal mentioned that this is something that they would 100% do once the game tech could actually support the design. Riot mentioned that they're working on pet AI a lot and they don't want to release a passive pet champion until the AI has actually improved, and that's why we haven't really seen anything like it so far. They didn't give us that many clues as to what to expect though, so it's a little bit difficult to speculate, but the core idea would be a pet that just intelligently does what you want and interacts with your abilities in some way, shape, or form, rather than being totally dependent on you controlling it or summoning it manually, such as Orianna's kind of pet ball, or maybe Malzahar's Voidlings. Ezreal also did mention that he wants a perfect multi-pet control or like clone system, inspired by Phantom Lancer from Dota. If that's the case, it would definitely be cool to see champions like Shaco or Malzahar maybe get reworked to have more control over those pets, maybe even get the ability to micro them all separately. Multiple unit management is definitely something that's a little bit difficult with League though because of the way the selection system works compared to Dota, and although it's definitely tricky to pull off, it's really rewarding for players who would take the time to master it. Riot Meddler also commented on the possibility of a champion with a more significant pet, and he mentioned that although the current system is fine for straightforward pets like Tibbers, it doesn't necessarily support constant pets that have their own personal skill sets, so it's unlikely that we might see a champion like this for a while, but the pet AI has been improving quite steadily over the past few months. But regardless, developing an entire new control system takes a lot of time, and figuring out the right way to introduce it into the game with a champion that properly suits it, well, that's going to take even longer. And that wraps up the list of, once again, these are official champion concepts from Riot that could exist in the future. Riot is usually pretty tight-lipped about future releases though, so these sneak peeks are pretty exciting to think about, but a little bit difficult to come by. Definitely leave a comment letting us know which concept you think would be the most awesome to see in the game, and it looks like that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.